For what, decades now, two names have pretty much owned the whole idea of archaeological adventure: Lara Croft and Indiana Jones. They've discovered lost cities, they've battled ancient curses, but today we're going to forget who's tougher, who's cooler, and ask a much more interesting question. Who is actually the better archaeologist?
Yeah, that's the real question, isn't it? This isn't about who wins in a fight. It's about this. If these two absolute legends showed up on a real, modern dig site, who gets the job and who gets escorted off the premises on day one?
Okay, so to even begin to answer that, we've got to set the stage. So what is real archaeology? Because I can tell you right now, it is not all about outrunning giant boulders and dodging poison darts. It's a science.
You see, real fieldwork is built on this foundation of just meticulous research. We're talking hours and hours of work before a single shovel even hits the dirt. And then it's about this painstakingly slow documentation of every single thing you find. And you've got to be completely committed to preserving the site for future generations. And maybe most importantly, patience. So much patience. The real goal here is knowledge, right? Not just grabbing the shiny treasure.
And that brings us to a really important kind of modern concept: casual colonialism. Now, this is a term that really critiques the entire genre our two heroes pretty much created. Stories where Western heroes take artifacts from other cultures, framing it all as heroism while totally ignoring the people whose culture it actually belongs to. This idea, it is absolutely central to our whole conversation today.
Okay, so with those ground rules set, let's take a look at our first candidate, Dr. Jones. I mean, on paper, his resume is perfect, right? A respected professor, deep academic knowledge. But what happens when he steps out of that classroom?
And right away, you see the massive contradiction with Indy. On one hand, you've got this tenured professor who knows his history inside and out. Academically, he's the genuine article. But in the field, oh man, he is a walking, talking catastrophe. He blows up priceless sites, snatches artifacts with zero documentation, and his go-to move is just reckless improvisation.
And look, you cannot underestimate his education. Like, according to the young Indiana Jones Chronicles, this guy's knowledge didn't just come from dusty old books. He literally met and learned from some of the most influential people of the 20th century. We're talking T.E. Lawrence, Pablo Picasso, even Sigmund Freud. His grasp of history is, in a very real way, firsthand.
But here's the thing. All that amazing knowledge just does not translate into good practice. A lot of cultural critics point out that his actions promote that exact smash-and-grab mentality we talked about. Sure, it looks great on screen, but it mirrors this really problematic colonialist approach that modern archaeology is actively trying to get away from.
All right, so what about his counterpart? Let's shift gears and look at the Tomb Raider herself. Is she a brilliant scholar, or is she just spoiling historical sites for everyone else?
Lara's backstory is fascinating, and it gives her this really unique set of skills. She comes from British aristocracy, so she has almost unlimited resources. But she's also a survivor, and her incredible intellect was kind of forged in trauma. And that mix of, privilege and pure grit, it makes her absolutely formidable.
And this is where you really start to see a difference between her and Indy. Indy always seems to be making it up as he goes, but Lara, she is all about the preparation. She's fluent in tons of languages, she's an expert on ancient civilizations, a master of her gear. By any measure, she is a brilliant researcher.
And yet, she falls into the exact same trap. Critics are quick to point out that her games, just by how you play them, they promote that same smash-and-grab thinking. I mean, looting is literally a game mechanic. It gives you points, but it completely sidesteps the tricky ethical questions about who really owns these artifacts.
Okay, so we've looked at them both individually. Now it's time for the face-off. We're going to put them head-to-head based on those principles we set up earlier. This is methodology versus just pure, unadulterated mayhem. All right, first up, academic rigor. And you got to give this one to Indy. It's a clear advantage. He's part of the establishment, a tenured professor with a formal institutional education. Lara, on the other hand, she's a brilliant independent scholar for sure, but her work is driven by personal passion, not peer review. So, point goes to Dr. Jones. But when we start talking about field methodology, the tables completely turn. Indy's go-to method is basically to punch his way through a problem. Lara, though, is all about research-driven exploration. She'll study the environment, solve complex puzzles. She analyzes the situation before she acts. Now, don't get me wrong, she still causes a ridiculous amount of destruction, but her approach, it is fundamentally more analytical.
But when we get to ethical conduct, well, it's a total wash. A complete disaster for both. Both of them consistently always prioritize the artifact over the site itself. They see something shiny, they grab it, and they usually destroy the place on their way out. From a real preservationist standpoint, they both get an F. A spectacular fail.
You know, the pop culture view of Indy's priorities is summed up perfectly by this amazing line from epic rap battles of history. And it's hilarious, but it really cuts to the truth, doesn't it? His loyalty is to the prize, to the hat, to the adventure, not to the actual science he's supposed to be representing.
Okay, we have laid out all the evidence, we've compared their methods, it is time for the final verdict. So, who gets the job, and who gets politely, or not so politely, shown the door?
Now you might be sitting there thinking, okay, but why does any of this even matter? They're just fictional characters from movies and video games. And you're right, but analyzing them is still really revealing. It tells us a lot about how our culture has seen things like exploration and history and heroism, and how those views are, or maybe aren't, changing over time.
So, let's break it down with a final performance review. When it comes to academic training, Indy gets an excellent, but for field prep, that's Lara all the way. Clear winner. And then we get to the two most important criteria for any modern archaeologist: site preservation and ethical conduct. And yeah, they both get a big fat fail.
And so, that brings us to the final verdict. The winner, and I gotta say it's by a pretty slim margin, is Lara Croft. Now let's be crystal clear about this. In the real world, both of them would be fired and probably arrested on day one, no question. But Lara's methodical, research-first approach, her habit of studying a problem before she smashes it, that is fundamentally closer to the scientific spirit of modern archaeology than Indiana Jones's brand of pure chaos.
So, we'll just leave you with this one last thought to chew on. We love these characters, right? They represent this thrilling, romantic idea of discovery. But maybe the real question we should be asking isn't about them at all. Maybe it's about us, and why, after all this time, we're still so completely captivated by a version of heroism that, if you look at it closely, looks an awful lot like theft.